Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, good to have you back on.
Good afternoon.
The coronavirus vaccine by Moderna seems to be getting closer to emergency approval in the U.S., and so Moderna's stock was up 20% overnight. Overall for Wall Street, though, stocks retreated from their all-time highs. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, U.S. market contracted a little bit. If you look at the Dow Jones, it was down by about 0.9%. S&P 500 was down 0.46. Nasdaq was down slightly by 0.06. However, though, if you look at the small cap, which outperformed significantly in the past 1 month or so, contracted by almost 2%. Clearly, there was some kind of changes in terms of the flows of the market, where the Nasdaq, which underperformed recent 1 month, has performed better at this point in time. If you look into the futures market right now, the U.S. market is actually showing quite a significant jump. It is showing anywhere between 0.8% to 1% rise. So clearly, exact opposite of what happened yesterday. Clearly, this is because of continuation of ample liquidity provided by the Fed, and also the possibility of additional fiscal budget coming through. And that, if you look at the vaccine side, it seems to be quite reasonably coming through as expected. The Federal Reserve Chairman Powell have said that he highlighted the importance of lending programs aimed at battling the economic bailout from the COVID pandemic. And clearly, we need some additional boosting measure coming through from the fiscal side, because in terms of the monetary side, Fed is doing whatever they can in terms of supporting the economy. So right now, there's a huge liquidity, and that liquidity needs to fit into the economic growth rate. In order for that actually to happen, you need actual spending by the government using the fiscal budget. And hopefully this will come through quite quickly. Also, there's continuation of some the struggle between U.S. and China in regards to the level of the trade dispute, and that the Trump administration continues to put some pressure on the chip makers such as SMIC and Sinuk in terms of the blacklisting, and that has resulted into some of the corrections that we saw in the U.S. market as well as the Asian market.
Well, here in Korea, the KOSPI strongly higher today, gaining back the better part of yesterday's losses. The other indices up too. What happened in the local markets today?
Right. U.S. markets being very weak, we were thinking that maybe Korea will probably do some further corrections, but it rebounded very sharply. Yesterday, the market fell by 1.6%, but today it's back up by 1.7% or so for KOSPI, and the Kosdaq is up about 0.6%. Clearly, some of the numbers are coming through that indicates that Korea is in a right track for recovery. The GDP numbers came through for the third quarter, and it contracted 1.1%. Compared to the preliminary number of 1.3% decline is actually better. And also the PMI numbers are coming through for Korea. The South Korean manufacturing PMIs increased to 52.9, up from 51.2 in the previous month. So clearly the manufacturing side, the industrial side is doing quite well, even though there's a COVID concern at this point. As you know that South Korea continues to add additional COVID-19 cases. It added about 438, which is slightly below what had been in the past several days. But still, some people are saying that this number might go up to as high as somewhere between 700 to 1,000, and that might have some negative implications for the consumption of Korea. However, though, continuation of manufacturing sector doing well, and that government is providing ample liquidity as well as the fiscal side, we think that the Korea will continue to be the better ones, particularly if you look at the sectors that we are recommending, such as the electric cars and battery sector, as well as the semiconductor sector, all doing very well relative to any other countries at this point in time.
Right, and staying with the economic data, exports were returned to growth last month, up 4% on year, according to the Trade Ministry. Tell us about that, and what do you make of these figures?
Right. The November number is coming through, and it's finally actually turning to positive territories. It rose by 4% year on year to hit 45.81 billion in November, after 3.8% fall in the previous month. So clearly a big turnaround, and but it was slightly below the market consensus of 6.8% rise. If you look at the export side, the displays surged 21.4%. Export of ships soared 32.6%. And whereas on the contrast, the outbound shipment of petrochemical fell by 8.3%. So clearly there's some discrepancy in terms of which sector is doing better, and particularly also the chip sector, semiconductor sector jumped by 16.4%. So there's definitely a discrepancy between the IT, fourth industrial revolution sectors, which are showing a recovery, versus some of these petrochemicals or any related to the old economy seems to be not doing that well. But overall, with the export recovering, Korea is in a good position to turn to positive economic growth number in the future. And because of that, we think that this will have some implication for the equity market to perform better in the future.
Got it. All right, we'll have to leave it there for today. Mr. Yu, we'll catch up again later this week. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.